If you're using Synology products, this is the video you need to watch because your NAS might be vulnerable and open to hacker attacks. So let's go to Synology advisory page and see what's going on. And it looks like bloody Christmas tree. So obviously there was a event pawned 2024 in Ireland where open hat hackers were invited to find all the vulnerabilities in Synology products, and they did a lot of findings down there. So let's go through what's going on. So first of all, we talked about Synology Photos and Photos earlier. They had discovered vulnerabilities, but this seemed to be coming back again. So after fixing, they figured out there's still some bits to be solved. So let's go into first thing, which is Synology Photos. So that's on a regular NAS with DSM operating system with Synology Photos installed. So they say this vulnerability is solved. So what is the vulnerability with Synology Photos? So if you have Synology Photos running on your NAS and you have exposed your NAS to the internet through opening the ports, either you type in IP address or domain name and you land on Synology Photos. This was zero-day attack possibility. So hackers could go to your NAS, execute the code and do whatever they want to do with your NAS. Put ransomware on it, steal your photos, whatever they wanted to do. So basically, if you update your Synology Photos app, your NAS will be safe. But for the future reference, do not expose your NAS or Synology Photos to the internet. If you want to access your Synology Photos remotely, use some sort of VPN service. Tailscale is for free. You can connect to your NAS through the private tunnel. And if you did use this VPN service, hackers wouldn't have access to your NAS, and therefore your photos and your original files would be safe. So the next up is a Replication Service. So what the Replication Service does is basically backing up your snapshots on your NAS to a remote NAS from one location to another location. So if there is a ransomware and your files are locked up or your NAS is stolen, you can turn back to previous versions of your files using this Replication Service. But the problem lies in this remote replication, which means between your original NAS and the backup NAS where you replicate your snapshots, this channel can be attacked. So this Replication Service has its own specific port which you will need to expose to the internet if you wanted to have this remote replication in a basic way using port forwarding instead of a VPN or other way. So this issue is still ongoing on their DSM UC series, so that's their enterprise NAS operating system. That's still not resolved, and that's really not good news for them because those are the guys that actually use this Replication Service most likely. For the home users, if you run DSM 7.1, 7.2, you need to upgrade that operating system and there will be a patch, so that cannot happen anymore. In the meantime, if you're an enterprise user, you'll need to at least change a port number for this Replication Service, if that's possible. Otherwise, use Firewall, so you only allow traffic to this remote NAS IP address. Only between these locations all the communication and access can happen. Otherwise, just use VPN. So let's move on to the next one. So now we have Synology Drive Server. So that's your Dropbox alternative. You have your folders synchronized or backed up. So in this case, they are still working on a fix for the specific operating system, which is DSM 7.1. It's a nice way of pushing to 7.2, where lots of features are taken away from you. But this is definitely gonna push people towards 7.2, but whatever. If you're on 7.2, you'll need to install a patch or the new upgrade for the OS, and it's going to be solved. So what's going on there? If your NAS again is exposed to the internet, your sessions might be hijacked. This vulnerability might not be that dangerous, so for that reason severity is important, not critical. Stealing web sessions and injecting SQL commands is fairly difficult thing to do, because this is nothing to do with exposing this service to internet. This attack most likely will happen in your own office environment. So if you are in a building with shared offices, some hackers might try to get into your network and then attack your service. Otherwise, if your Windows machine has some malware, so what those hackers would do, they would hack into your computer instead of NAS and steal this session, which means it's like a handshake connection between your Synology Drive service and your computer. So they take that handshake and use on their own computer, and they are able to access your files on Drive. So in this case, just keep your computer clean as well, not just NAS. Have your antivirus updated. This will prevent people to take over your computer or steal sessions from your work computer or home. So let's move on to next one. So next one is critical DSM. So this vulnerability is about DSM. This means every regular Synology NAS runs on DiskStation management operating system, and they have several problems with it. So this is again a zero-day attack on 7.1 and DSM UC enterprise systems, which means there's nothing really you can do. Hackers can take over your data if you're running on these operating systems. If you run on DSM 7.2, you can do upgrade and it's safe. But otherwise, if your NAS is exposed to the internet and there's no VPN or firewall enabled, it's just basically open goal. So what hackers do is scan through every single IP address on the internet, and then they check open port. If port 5001 is or 5000 is open, that means you are running Synology, and they'll try to execute this arbitrary code to put on some ransomware, steal things, lock things up, whatever they want to do with the Synology. So for that reason, do not expose your NAS to the internet. No port forwarding, forget about it. Use VPN like Tailscale, or at least use a firewall service which allows only specific IP address to connect to your NAS. That's the only protection in this case. So in this situation, 7.2 is patched, but 7.1 is still ongoing. They're saying it's in 30 days there's going to be a release patching this vulnerability, and for enterprise users the same case, 30 days. So good luck. If you use Synology QuickConnect, you are much safer, but it's still kind of exposed to the world. So there is theoretically a possibility someone might figure out what's your QuickConnect ID if you're not careful enough, or they might be just scanning through different variations of QuickConnect. So when you create a QuickConnect account, make sure you use some really long username and very complicated, so there's nothing from the dictionary. So at least this is a way to connect your NAS if you don't know how to use VPN or firewalls. Make sure your QuickConnect login ID is fairly difficult, because you need to remember all these zero-day attacks doesn't need your password username. This is like a hole in the system that they can just go through the back door and hack into your system. Doesn't matter if you have strong password, username, two-step authentication, that doesn't matter. They'll just come at you and get you. So let's move on to the next one. So then you have Photos app vulnerability on regular DSM and BSM. So this is your DiskStation, BSM, or regular NAS like that. It will have Synology Photos app, and there is a vulnerability on that app. So let's have a look what's going on. So they're saying this is resolved, but this also was a zero-day attack, which means they didn't need your password or username. They could just hack into your NAS if you had your NAS exposed to the internet. So there are patches already available, so make sure you update your Synology Photos. And Photos, which is for DiskStation, there's also a fix already issued. So all you need to do is just download and update in your DiskStation, and the fix will be there. to prevent hackers attacking your system in the future when another hole will come up and nobody will know about it, make sure you use VPN service like Tailscale or any other VPN service. But Tailscale seems to be very easy, or at least have a firewall which allows only certain IP addresses to connect to your NAS. There are a few other things that happened earlier last month, which was Synology camera vulnerability, which meant that if it was also exposed to the internet, hackers could get into the camera and get your images, your footage, what's going on that camera. So there's a fix for that as well. For SRM, which is their routers, there was a vulnerability for registered users. So even if it was exposed to the internet, hackers couldn't get into it. Only those that are registered but do not have admin rights on that Synology router, they could potentially gain access to admin level things like files and things like that. But it was never very dangerous. For that reason, it's marked as moderate. Anyways, just to wrap this thing up, I'll just remind you about the security and how to keep things safe. Because these 0 days vulnerabilities are out there, they are not discovered yet. There are white hat hackers and black hat hackers. So black hat hackers will find about these vulnerabilities, the holes in the system, they'll sell it to the black market, and then hacker teams will prepare a mass attack. Whenever it's available, they will just launch an attack and then thousands of devices will be attacked. Otherwise, if it's early stages like this would be only one-to-one attack, which is not very profitable. So for that reason, hackers also need time to build their attack. What you can do is use Tailscale or other VPN service. Some of them are free, some of them are not. Make sure you also change port numbers for each service that you use. Either it's a DSM or Photos or Replication Service, because at least that will slow hackers down. Because when hackers scan your network, they'll look for open ports, and open ports will basically tell them what apps you're using, what apps you're exposing to internet, and then they know what attack to apply. So change those ports as well. And if you're connecting to a specific IP address only to your NAS, use a firewall and allow only those specific IP addresses, those specific computers to connect to your NAS, no one else. You can also have regional filters, which means you can only allow traffic from certain country. But unfortunately, these are the only things you can do against 0-day attacks. Better passwords, usernames, or two-step authentications will not help. If you're exposing your NAS to the internet, make sure you do it in a safe way.